Hello, welcome to my channel and thank you for watching. Today I'll be talking about a few images again um, and kind of continuing on the theme of farm workers. I'll now look at farm workers and uh, rural dwellers, if you like, people who live in rural areas. And the first image, as you have seen, is of a couple and a child. And this couple and a child are farm workers whom I visited. And let me just read the caption as I normally do at the beginning, which the caption reads, Farm Worker and Family. Akopo o Ikopo, KwaZulu-Natal, 1983. So this makes it a very early image of mine, one I'm particularly fond of, I must say. This portrait was made at the request of the farm worker, which is the male, the figure in this portrait, and I visited this family with a friend who took me out to knew these people and took me out onto this farm, and so it was a kind of a social visit, really just a social visit in which I was then requested to make a portrait, to make some pictures of them, and which I did. And a lot of people read this as being a picture of impoverishment. Well, with the endemic impoverishment that existed back then, especially on farms and rural people in particular, um, I don't particularly just read poverty. I read a lot of dignity on the part of these people, and that they were not certainly dressed in their Sunday best, and had they been, they would have presented quite a different image. But I think this reflected the reality of their everyday lives, and that's what makes it such an important image. I'd like to say at this point as in time as well that the thing about photographing on farms is that farms are incredibly difficult to access in South Africa. Um, the There's an anthropologist whose name just escapes me, who did a project on farms, and he said that farms are like South African commercial farms, that is, are like fiefdoms. They are like mini states, and you do not have permission. Nobody easily has permission to enter that farm without the express consent of the farmer, which makes what takes place on farms, especially around the social relations between the employer and the employee, very difficult to assess and to access and to assess. And I think whenever you look at images that emerge from farms, one needs to bear that in mind. So yeah, so that's an image that as I say, I'm particularly fond of, because I don't simply read poverty in it. I see such a lot of affection. This man holding um, his son, which could be his son's hand, and yeah, just there's an elegance and um, something quite beautiful about that family. This next image we'll look at is related to one that I showed in my last session, and it is of no, the one that precedes the farm workers, that is, and it reads, the caption reads, "Camp for tenant farmer families evicted from white-owned farms, Weenen, KwaZulu-Natal, 1988." And again, I love this image. I love the spunkiness of this young guy with his pork pie hat. Um, and that white mess that you see, that line that sort of is behind his head, are the tents that I spoke about. Probably about 50 or 60 tents of people evicted from um, white-owned farms, but from land that they had occupied for generations, before those became white-owned farms, because of this law, anti-tenant farmer law, that eventually broke that kind of tenuous relationship. Um, and this image speaks to me about the spirit of resilience of those people who occupied that land in the Wenan, Tugela Ferry region, an area that most South Africans never get to see because it's it's kind of off the beaten track. And unless you have some real business or you're related to people that live in that area, or farm there or whatever, you don't get there that easily. And a place that I always lament that I haven't, would have loved to have done more photographs in that region, but didn't get to do because it's far flung, and finding the resources to spend the time and work in those areas for protected periods of time is not that easy. So the image that I will look at now is the next one. The caption reads, "A woman in the community of Banganek, which was threatened with forced removal in order to make way for a nature reserve. Ingwavuma, KwaZulu-Natal, 1988." And this area was introduced to by the anthropologist David Webster, who was doing, research in with these people, and invited me to come along and photograph for his research. Some of you South Africans will know this was the greater than life character of David Webster, who was eventually assassinated by the apartheid state because of his activism. And a man, one of the many people that I'm honored to have met, great individuals who lived and a life of lived their lives to the full, no matter how short that life was. He was an extraordinary human being. This image just captures the winsomeness of a young woman connecting to the outside world, and to her femininity, her womanhood, even in that far-flung area. I've had a long-term relationship with these people, one that I can never get enough of. The next one is, I'm going to leave that one for the next time. The one let's do this one here. This is the local woman with harvested reeds to be used in the building of traditional homes, Cozy Bay, Ingwavuma, KwaZulu-Natal, 1991. So this is the same region. And, the thing about this image is that the authorities responsible for the environment were making a huge effort to remove the indigenous people who had occupied this area, under the guise that they were destroying the environment by doing things like harvesting the reeds from the lake, or overfishing with the fish kraals and other methods of fishing the lakes and even the ocean. So there were huge pressures to remove them, which ultimately failed. And I'm happy to say the people still live there. The place has changed quite a lot. It is much more occupied now. And for even people like myself initially, who were used to the more pristine nature of the way it looked, that seemed to be a problem. But actually, people have coexisted there for literally millennia. These are Tonga people, in fact, in that region, who were fishing people and lived off David observed that they hardly ate any meat back then. They ate mostly off the ocean and peanuts and things like that they grew. a very healthy lifestyle back then, and they built their houses with these reeds. So yeah, an image I'm quite um, pleased to have made back then. And I'm also pleased that these people have managed to retain their rights to a region that they called home. So thank you for watching. And for more information on myself and my work can be found on my website, a link to which, including my blog and email address, can be found in the video description below. If you like this talk, remember to click the like button and press subscribe. It helps the channel grow.